I was born in India and started going to the cinema there when I was a kid, and sort of fell in love with it. When we came over to England, I did the schooling here, but unfortunately the cinema was the only thing that really interested me, and so school really suffered. And that's the sort of way I carried on, which is pretty irresponsible, really. Fortunately, there was an ad for the BBC wanting people to work on the scene crew, moving scenery and whatever. Well, you didn't need you didn't need very much. You didn't need an academic, sort of qualification for that. So I took it. And that was great. The BBC at the time was the best film school you could ever ever work in. Anyway, I started on moving scenery and working in the studios, and I was fascinated the way they worked out what the shots to go to this camera, and then they used to flick between one camera and the other very, very fast, and I couldn't work out what this was. And then I finally did work it out, because it was this business of the focal point. You're looking at one shot, looking at the left hand, you cut to the next one, you want to be there, and then you move on. And when I realized when I realized that's what they were doing, and that was it. I knew I had to get into editing. Can you believe it? By just things like that. So I managed to get a job as an assistant editor, and then as an editor. And because it was and you could make your own films, you could explore the BBC. It was all there for you, and you had the big film department, a lot of editors. And then I met Mike Lee as I didn't work with him in the BBC, but I met him. But then I did some films with Les Blair, who was a great friend of his, and who was making films at the time. We made two in the BBC, and then he was going to make his first feature, and I thought, right there, and he wanted me to do it, so I left so I got my first feature quite quickly. That's all because of the BBC. I really owe it all to the BBC at the time. But at that time, the BBC used to farm out a lot of documentaries, arts features, things like that. And I knew the people there, so I was able to eke that out and make a living until Mike was doing his first feature, Mike Lee, and he asked me to do it. And then it snowballed and carried on.